Soviet defense minister was not worried that Ruth was able to evade Soviet radar because it's widely known that the United States has no Piper Cubs in its nuclear arsenal. Finally, the year ended with summit talks between the president and Mr. Gorbachev, culminating in an arms agreement that will eliminate nearly 2,000 nuclear warheads. This means that instead of having the capability to destroy the Earth 100 times over, we are now only capable of destroying the Earth 98 times over. Incidentally, reacting to the warm friendship between Reagan and Gorbachev at the summit, the timekeeper of the doomsday clock moved the apocalypse back 3 minutes. However, when he noticed the relationship between the First Lady, he quickly moved it back up. Ellen?
Thank you. Overseas, we saw Queen Elizabeth reviewing the troops on a visit to Berlin.
Suck in that gut, soldier. Stand up straight, dogface. Look alive, this is the army, you scum.
But India's Prime Minister Gandhi is no Queen Elizabeth.
Ready, but posture.
Meanwhile, in Beirut, PLO leader Yasser Arafat found he had too many troops, so he instituted a program of severe cutbacks. And in Southern California, a rash of freeway shootings really cleared up the traffic problem. Steve?
There were some very big birthdays in 1987. We celebrated the signing of the Constitution 200 years ago, the birth of Hollywood 100 years ago, and the invention of Spam just 50 years ago. From this, it's easy to see which direction our culture is heading. Frosty?
And back in the USA, violence reared its ugly head on none other than President Reagan when a deranged maniac in a Spider-Man outfit tried to hijack his limousine. No one was hurt. And speaking of violence, baseball had its share as pitchers threw at batters, batters went after pitchers, and the fans loved it. And scientists have finally figured out what caused that earthquake in Los Angeles, which registered 6.1 on the Richter scale. Apparently, it was the Richter scale itself which was mistakenly set at 6.1. The error has been corrected and the scale reset to 0. Meanwhile, that quake really knocked the L out of Hollywood. The sign has since been repaired by Vanna White. Back to you, Bob.
But when all was said and done, one story, and one story alone, dominated the news this past year. It was the headline of 1987, and it was, of course, Gary Hart asking Donna Rice to marry him. No date has been set. Now this.
This portion of Not Necessarily the Year in Review is brought to you by Tammy Baker Industrial Strength Cosmetics. Eyeshadow you can roll on. Mascara with a consistency of tempered steel. And foundation that hardens to a cement-like finish. Tammy Baker Industrial Strength Cosmetics. For the lady who wants her makeup to last for life.
And now, this special report from our newest correspondent.
Not to accept. And as soon as we get...
Oh, hey, everybody, it's me, Mr. Bill, hey! And boy, are we gonna have fun today, because we're here at the White House, hey!
Shh, Mr. Bill, you'll interrupt the president. Say, while we're waiting for him to finish his speech, why don't we show everyone some of the big stories you've covered this year?
Oh, yeah, hey, that'd be great, hey, boy!
Your story on new Speaker of the House, Jim Wright, sure was a smash hit.
Excuse me, Mr. Wright, I just wanted to tell you what a swell job you've been doing. Even though I do miss Tip O'Neill, he sure was funny and all. Mr. Bill here in Spain for the annual running of the bulls, hey! Oh, and they're off, hey! You know, they've been doing this for centuries, and there's still enough people left to do it again this year, hey!
Say, Mr. Bill, why don't we get closer for an even better view?
Oh, no, that's okay. I don't want to see the bulls.
And say, Mr. Bill, those stories you did on the Defense Department sure were a big bang.
Mr. Bill reporting from inside this missile silo where there's about to be a big test of stuff. Mr. Bill reporting from our home in Hollywood. We have just been shaken by a 6.1 earthquake and are still experiencing aftershocks.
Say, Mr. Bill, we better put Spot in a safe place.
Okay, Mr. Hands, but shouldn't we be hiding under the table or something?
No, I think you'll be fine just where you are.
Oh, wait. Oh, here comes another aftershock. Oh,
Remember when you were hanging around at the White House for the lighting of the tree?
Way up underneath there, there's another little figure looking down on Santa Claus.
First Lady, please. I can't breathe. No, really. I'm getting brain damage. Please.
Say, Mr. Bill, I'll get you down.
No, wait. No. Yeah, it sure has been a rough year. Oh, well, maybe next year will be better.
Well, let's see what the president has to say about that, Mr. Bill. So for not necessarily the news, Mr. Bill says...
Alex, I think I have it. How does this sound? Preamble. We, the bunch of us, in order to keep the slaves down on the farm and the women in the kitchen, to collect more taxes, get an army together, and take some free vacations, have decided to write this Constitution.
It's close, but there's something missing. It just doesn't sing to me yet.
Well, how about we, all of us guys, in order to keep the
The
slaves
first
down...
draft,
You like that?
the exciting story of the writing of the Constitution.
Labor unrest boiled to the surface in 1987. Workers demanded job security and better wages. Management called for rollbacks. Among those who hit the picket lines, the actors who do the voices for all our favorite cartoon characters. Olive Oyl summed up labor's position this way.
It's unfair. Absolutely unfair.
But Fred Flintstone remained optimistic.
However, if we win, it'll be yabba-jabba-doo time.
1987 was a notable year for TV dramas dealing with mental and physical illness of every imaginable variety, from AIDS to nymphomania. But producers seemed to be straining for subject matter, as with time, all the really good diseases had been taken. Here's a scene now from a TV movie dealing with a woman who learns she has malabsorption syndrome, causing her to become allergic to wheat.
Damn it, Brad. You know I can't eat bread. I told you 1,000 times, no wheat flour of any kind.
Damn it, Susie. Can't you see what this malabsorption thing's doing to our relationship?
A scene from the Susie Marchenko story, another TV movie from 1987. Now this.
Are you without the pep and drive you need to cope with life? Maybe you're not getting enough rest. If you're like most people, you need to identify the many rest opportunities hidden in daily life. Say you're attending a top-level conference of world leaders called to solve urgent international problems. Why not bag a few Z's right there? Or picture yourself at a dull ceremony or a boring speech. A perfect opportunity to recharge your batteries. Perhaps your husband is being grilled by a Senate committee. Does that mean you can't grab a few winks? Sleep good any time of the day or night.
By any standard, it hasn't been an easy year for President Ronald Reagan. Here's Steve Casper with a report. Steve?
Thanks, Ellen. On the economic front, the skyrocketing foreign trade deficit was at the top of the president's agenda.
Jim Wright and I agreed that there are 3 things we must do to balance the trade deficit. We can't remember what they are.
The president wound up his year in trouble with the left over his nomination of right-winger Robert Bork to the Supreme Court, in trouble with the press over his lack of press conferences, and in trouble with the right over his nuclear arms agreement with the Soviet Union. The president responded in customary fashion.
So even though there may be some misguided criticism of what we're trying to do, I think we're on the wrong path.
He'll get no arguments from this reporter about that.
And hoping it will allow the president more nap time, the White House today unveiled the presidential cardboard cutout. While the gullible Salvadoran President Duarte was fooled, staffers are worried about the cutout's upcoming interview with Sam Donaldson.
Kinnick's speech? My speech. Kinnick's? Mine. Kinnick's? Mine. Kinnick's? Mine. Kinnick's? Mine.
The twist ending to the Iran-Contra hearings was Bob Woodward's book, Veil, recounting the details of a deathbed interview he conducted with former CIA Chief William Casey. Only now can it be revealed that our own NNTN anchor Bob Charles also interviewed Director Casey in the hospital only hours before he passed away. Bob, tell us how you did it and what you found out.
Thank you, Helen. Well, as you know, many questions have been raised about the authenticity of Bobby Woodward's story. After all, we only have his word for it. The exclusive videotape you are about to see, made at great personal risk, will once and for all set the historical record straight. First, I disguised myself as a patient in the hospital. Then we hid the camera in a hospital service wagon. And we disguised my cameraman, Harold, as a nurse's aide. I told the CIA agent guarding Casey's room that there was a call for him on the first floor. As soon as he was out of sight, we went in. Casey was resting comfortably, but we didn't have much time. Between the medication and the sedation, it was no easy task to rouse him from his stupor. Soon, he came to, but without his glasses, he couldn't recognize me. I told him I was Ted Koppel.
I'm Ted Koppel.
Director Casey, did the president know about the diversion of funds to the Contras? And was Colonel Oliver North actually taking his orders from you? Was Attorney General Meese aware of the cover-up? How about Bush? What about Sinatra? Are you sure about Sinatra? Incredible! Then I heard something in the hall. Go, go! I was lucky to get out of there alive.
Well, that was, as you said, incredible, Bob.
Helen, it was like a nightmare. I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have gone.
Well, I heard that Bob Woodward went, and I figured Casey wasn't that sick. Well, that item about Sinatra, that's a scoop.
I think it belongs in a scoop, Bob. Thank you. Now this.
I'm Edwin Newman, and I've had a headache all year long. It started back in January. I was in Moscow on vacation, and the Marines at the United States Embassy were called home on espionage charges. I was there. I could have had that story, but Walt Rogers of ABC News tricked me into having 6 straight vodkas and beat me to it. That's when I developed a slight pain right behind the eyes. I went back to my room, and a friend in the States called to tell me that 12 reporters from the Miami Herald had surrounded my house. I grabbed the first Aeroflot out of town, but when I got home, they were leaving. They told me they never would have been there if they'd known it was my house. Well, I needed some serious cheering up, so I decided to buy myself a piece of art. I love art. I got in my car. I headed down to New York for an auction. That was the day the bridge collapsed in Connecticut. The ache in the back of my neck was getting worse, and it was not going to go away. I drove on in pain, but I got to Christie's too late. They sold Sunflowers, my favorite Van Gogh, to some foreigner for $39.8 million. I didn't even get my bid in. Now, that hurt right here. By the end of the year, the pounding in my skull was pretty intense. What I did not need was Andy Rooney getting another of his 98-page books onto the bestseller list. I could complain about paper clips. I've had a lot of trouble with paper clips. The throbbing was killing me by this time. That's when I took one of these. Edwin Newman's old-fashioned headache powders. For when you've had a headache all year long. They clear away the pain. So you can start all over again.
Edwin Newman's old-fashioned headache powders.
The women's movement got a lift in '87 from, of all places, Iran. Here's Frosty in Tehran with the story.
After 7 years of war, there is a serious shortage of able-bodied men to fight the Ayatollah's battles.
It's my wish to be killed for Islam.
After a while, they were drafting anything in pants. But now, for the first time, Iranian women are being allowed to join the army and die for Islam. They learn all about bayonets, hand grenades, and even semi-automatic weapons. In just a matter of weeks, they'll be at the front. And you know, it's said, Bob, that the Ayatollah came up with the whole idea while screening a cassette of Private Benjamin. Meanwhile, in Iraq, a more sophisticated country, recruitment is handled in a more sophisticated way through the media, as we see in this Iraqi-made commercial aimed at the American audiences.
Housewives, are you bored silly sitting around the house all day? Well, if you like fresh air, the outdoors, and don't mind biting the head off a live snake, the Iraqi Women's Brigade may be the place for you. So sign up today and start enjoying great meals in an exotic locale where the approval of your peers will make you feel really appreciated.
And now, with some thoughts on the Iran-Contra hearings, our poet in residence, my brother, Osgood Charles.
Money for the Contras. From arms sales to Iran, made great TV for you and me, cause
Everything hit the fan.
Secord was defiant about his role by Jiminy. He may have gone beyond the law.
Yes, Mr. Niels, but I did not go to Bimini.
Fawn Hall stole our hearts away. Then Ollie came to bat. But they could not find the findings.
I think I shredded most of that.
Poindexter puffed upon his pipe and claimed that it was he who ran the show, and
you know, the buck stops here with me.
Schultz called it an outrage. Cap said it made him shout.
I think it was a neat idea.
Mighty Casey, he ducked out. I guess the only question left, expressed in terms poetic, is just what did the president forget? And when did he forget it? Now this.
Now it's time for Look It Up, a new feature designed to get people to, well, look it up. Our guest tonight is Congressman Henry Hyde of Illinois. Take it away, Mr. Hyde.
They want a formal sit-down summit which would have the effect of delegitimating the Contras.
Want to hear it again?
Delegitimating.
Okay, that's enough. Now go and look it up. See you next time on Look It Up.
From the people who brought you Donna Rice for No Excuses Jeans comes Gary Hart for No Morals. No morals. It's in the jeans.
1987 was a busy and controversial year for Pope John Paul II. Here's the story from Bob Charles. Bob?
Thank you, Helen. And what a busy year it was. As usual, the Pope spent much of his time receiving world leaders and visiting with heads of state. But new attitudes about sex and morality and a rebellion within the rank and file forced John Paul to hit the road and take his message to the people. After a series of awkward mishaps in Argentina and a very chilly reception in Chile, John Paul touched down for a whirlwind 9-day tour of the United States. In Miami, he met with President Reagan.
And this one has to do with a commissar, they're telling, who went out to a collective farm, grabbed the first worker there that he saw, and he asked him about life on the farm, and all the fellow said, "It's wonderful, comrade." Well, he said, "Any complaints?" "Oh, no, sir, no complaints at all." "What about the crops?" "Oh, the crops never been better." "The potatoes?" "Commissar, comrade, if we piled all the potatoes up in one pile, they would reach the foot of God." And the commissar said, "Just a minute. This is the Soviet Union. There is no God." He says, "That's all right. There are no potatoes."
While in Hollywood, the Pope left his Pope-mobile in the garage so he could visit the movie studios and see the homes of the stars from atop the famous Hollywood Wonder Bus. Then it was off to an amusement park, where the Holy Father had the time of his life playing pinball and testing his infallibility against the latest video arcade games. Everywhere the Pope went, he won the hearts of those he came in contact with. He even got to attend the taping of one of his favorite American TV shows, Amen, starring Sherman Hemsley. And for the perfect ending to a perfect visit, the Pope enjoyed a chili dog on his way to the airport.
He's really in pain.
What's the pain like?
Oh, I can't describe it. Oh, but it really hurts.
I'm sure no one has to tell you how expensive hospital visits have gotten over the past year. That's why more and more people are turning to hospital plans. But how reliable are those plans? Let's find out from an employee of one such company who's chosen to keep his identity a secret for his own protection.
We basically offer 3 plans. The top of the line is the Pamper plan. With this plan, you are guaranteed 3 adequate meals a day, sporadic medication, and reasonably decent medical attention.
Uh-huh.
Then we have the No Frills plan. A cot, a box lunch, and an intern.
And your bottom-of-the-line plan?
That would be the substantially less plan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Phillips.
But is it really all that bad? We decided to visit a local hospital and find out for ourselves.
Come on, Millie. Open up. Open up. No, it's not very good. Just try to...
Hello? Nurse? Excuse me. Sir? Steve Casper, NNTN. I see a lot of patients around. Where might the nurses be? In there. Thank you.
Hey, you! Bring me something to drink, will you?
Nurse, can't you see that he's a sick man? What is this, some kind of a sit-in, a protest, strike? What?
No, we're providing the best medical care possible under the circumstances.
And what exactly are the circumstances?
It's time for one life to live.
And now, once again, one life to live. Ironically, that's all these patients have. And that might not be true for too much longer. From a typical hospital, I'm Steve Casper.
1987 was a year in which the truth in all its many forms took quite a beating. For more on that story, we go via satellite hookup to our European correspondent, Helen St. Thomas. Helen?
I'm here in Geneva, Switzerland, Bob, where moral philosophers and political scientists from 26 countries have gathered to assess the effect of the continuing erosion of credibility in human affairs. Of course, one of the hottest topics here is the Iran-Contra affair. Since the...
Excuse me, Helen.
Yes?
I just noticed a bunch of football players behind you. I thought you said you were in Switzerland.
I didn't say that I was in Switzerland.
Yes, you did, Helen. You certainly did. I have it right here on tape.
Well, I may have said Switzerland, but I don't recall saying it.
Helen, you just got finished saying it. How could you not remember?
Bob, I was only following orders, all right? Casper told me that you approved the whole thing, and you wanted me to say that I was in Switzerland.
I never approved any such thing.
Well, then it's Casper's fault. In any case, I now recall that I am really in Boston. May I continue with my report?
Please.
The shameless lying of the Reagan administration this year was matched only by the Democratic candidates for president.
Wait, hold it. How are we supposed to believe you're in Boston when I just saw 3 people walk by on their way to the beach?
Okay, I am in Los Angeles. What is the difference?
Helen, there are certain professional standards which we...
Don't talk to me about standards, Charles. I have you know I graduated in the top half of my class at the Columbia School of Journalism.
You didn't even go to journalism school, Helen.
Okay, big deal, so I am not a saint. You know, is any of this relevant? A lot of great reporters have lied. If you continue with this prying and spying into my private life, you're going to convince a lot of potentially great young journalists not to enter the field. You know, it is
We will
people
be back
with no imagination
in a moment,
who
right after this.
continue to insist on telling the truth all of the time. Is that
Coming up, Michael Jackson's chimp Bubbles undergoes cosmetic surgery.
Diane Sawyer and the news. The news never looked so good.
Getting married? They can help at Easy Wedding Chapel. It takes the worry out of making a commitment.
Easy Wedding Chapel. They can help. Wednesday at 8 o'clock, it's Our Dying Oceans. Then at 9, it's The Vanishing Forest. And finally at 10, it's Oh, Those Extinct Animals. A memorable evening of fine television for the entire family. Things are looking up at PBS.
trying to get out of a rotten, abusive marriage that you've rushed into? They can help you at Smith & Smith Legal Clinic. They'll get you alimony, the house, the kids, and anything else you want.
Smith & Smith Legal Clinic. They can help.
One of the big trends in entertainment this year was Hollywood's sudden discovery of the trials and tribulations of being a working mother, as in the new TV series 30-something and the film Baby Boom. The result, predictably, is Much Ado About Nothing. Let's try to look at this with some sense of perspective. How long have babies been around? Quite a while. No? And women in the workforce, is this a new phenomenon? Not exactly. How about the gals who crossed the prairies in covered wagons? That wasn't hard work. Judging from all the hoopla, you'd think this generation invented motherhood. I mean, wake up and smell the coffee out there. This is not new. Bob?
Thank you, Frosty. In the world of international commodity trading, the big news in night... Oh, forget it. We'll just have to do the story later.
Running for president means looking good all the time. That's why Jack Kemp developed Kemp's grooming aids, cologne, talc, and hairspray. So be like Jack. Don't be unkempt. You'll look good enough to head a nation.
Feeling old and unattractive after a recent, painful, bitter divorce? Could plastic surgery be the answer to starting a new life? They can help you at Dr. Fremont's Plastic Surgery Clinic in Tustin. A facelift, eye job, and liposuction will have you feeling and looking like a new woman.
They can help at Dr. Fremont's Plastic Surgery Clinic.
Hello. Well, this is the part of the show where we like to gather the entire news team together and just discuss the events of the past year. With me, Steve Casper, our White House correspondent, Helen St. Thomas, our expert on the economy, and Frosty Kimmelman to analyze the presidential race. Steve Casper, our White House correspondent. Well, it's been a pretty tough year for President Reagan.
Yes, it has, Bob. As a matter of fact...
Steve, how are they reacting overseas to President Reagan's plight?
Overseas?
Yes, like in France, for example.
Well, gee, Bob, that's not really my territory. I don't know.
Yes, I know that it's not your territory, but you can can at least speculate on who has Reagan's ear, Mitterrand or Chirac.
Mitterrand or who? I'm sorry, who's the other guy you mentioned? Did he say?
Helen, St. Thomas. The economy was on a roller coaster ride all year.
Yes, it was, Bob. And
So tell me, how does SDI figure into all of this? And can we afford it?
SDI? I don't understand.
Helen, you know, the Strategic Defense Initiative, President Reagan's Star Wars.
Now, Bob, I've seen Star Wars years ago. Was Reagan in that picture? I thought he was president already. Well, Bob, I really don't think this is fair. I came prepared to talk about the economy, and I had a lot of great material and everything.
Great, Helen, fine. Great, we'll get back to you. Frosty, come on. Frosty, could you put down the pomegranate for just a second?
The persimmon, Bob.
Fine, persimmon, whatever, and tell us your impression of the way the presidential race is shaping up.
Oh.
What? What's the matter?
Oh. I think that's a bad persimmon.
Oh.
Oh, excuse me, Bob. Could you pass those lychee nuts?
Oh, and by the way, you can pass that hummus over there.
Could I have some more celery, Tony?
You know, I am a little surprised at you people. Veteran journalists? You seem to be more interested in lychee nuts and pomegranates than you do in the news. What? We have important things to discuss here. Bork, TV evangelists, the Persian dog.
Bob, you really should try this corn dog. They're great.
I don't want a corn dog.
How about some of this?
I got a pizza here for, let's see.
All right, here. I'll take that. Keep the change. Get out.
Where's that? Oh, there it is. Got any pepperoni?
We'll be back in a minute.
Are you facing up to 25 years in prison if convicted on 5 counts of perjury and making false statements to a House subcommittee and a grand jury? So is this man. But is he worried?
I am confident I have not committed perjury and that I will be acquitted after a trial.
Why is he so confident? It's because his lawyers are going to prove that while testifying, he was also drinking, so he couldn't have known what he was saying. What's his brand? Old Bergerer, Kentucky Bourbon. Old Bergerer is the only whiskey recommended by the American Bar Association.
Has a recent divorce and a botched facelift left you so depressed that you've developed some sort of substance abuse or chemical dependency? They can help you at the Woodhall Briar Chemical Dependency Clinic. No electric shock used.
The Woodhall Briar Chemical Dependency Clinic. They can help.
The race for the presidency heated up last year as Republican and Democratic candidates alike shifted positions in the polls like a bunch of drugged quarter horses. After Gary Hart dropped out of the race, the Democrats were left with some bona fide candidates.
You're dopey, sleepy, grumpy, bashful, happy, sneezy, and Doc.
Then Dopey dropped out, citing the following reasons.
Greed, envy, anger, avarice, gluttony, and sloth.
Finally, Snow White dropped out of the race. she can now be seen on the Disney Channel. As far as Joe Biden's future, it seems secure after a multi-million-dollar contract with a famous beer company.
Tastes great. Less filling. Tastes great. Less filling.
He'll be the first in the history of that campaign to take both sides. Recently, I tried to get a few words with Senator Biden outside the Capitol. Senator Biden? Senator Biden! Senator! Senator Biden! As for the Republicans, George Bush leads the pack, but there is some question about his, well, intelligence.
This is already this flyable.
So, who is going to be our next president? We ask our political expert just that question.
I don't have the slightest idea. I really don't.
And that was Politics 87. I'm Frosty Kimmelman.
This just in, with the re-entry of Gary Hart into the race, the latest polls show Hart in the lead for the Democratic nomination. And with the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary just around the corner, Hart could have the whole thing wrapped up even before he gets to the convention in July. By the way, these are shots of Hart's campaign headquarters as they get ready for the next few months.
Oh, hello, I'm Edwin Newman. I'm Edwin Newman, and it's time once again for Sniglets. A sniglet is any word that does not appear in the dictionary, but should. When you've taken yourself out of the running and absolutely refuse to become an active participant, you are comatose. The operation in which you substitute an acceptable word at the last second for the vulgarism you were about to use,
I'm working my head off.
Is a vulgarectomy. The idea of the world's being run by a big brother-like evangelical preacher is positively Falwellian. A story that's generally ignored by the newspapers but always gets shown on TV is called Film at 11.
It's a grand old wall. It's a long-standing wall.
When you sing a song about the Great Wall of China without any accompaniment, you are singing a cappella.
Drove the kulaks away in a rage.
And finally, anyone who makes a noise telling you to be quiet but doesn't have the guts to admit it is known as a shushpect. If you have a sniglet and don't know where to send it to Sniglets, Post Office Box 2350, Hollywood, California, 90078. And if you'd like to own your own book of Sniglets, pick up a copy of our latest compilation, Angry Young Sniglets. But don't go to the library to read it. Buy the book. Then you won't have to return it in 2 weeks, and you won't have to see them again. You want to make something of it? What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?
Have you recently recovered from a painful divorce, a botched facelift, and a chemical dependency? Ready to start life over with someone new? They can help at 976. They offer a wide variety of phone numbers you can call to meet someone, from 451-976-MEET to 451-976-DATE. So why not call now? Tomorrow, you could be meeting someone just like you.
976, the answer to all your needs.
Chemical dependency and divorce?
No, be over at 8.
The spurned husband.
They seem to have the attitude that I should just be out in the street and thankful that I've even been with Joan at all.
The cast-off lover.
Did he ever call you by a certain name?
Passion flower.
The drama of a courtroom thriller, brought to television like never before. And of course, the center of the storm, the femme fatale to end all femme fatales.
Joan Collins, Joancollins.
Did you marry Tom?
Yes.
Did you marry Dick?
Yes.
Did you marry Harry, John, Bruno, Stanley, Giancarlo, Anwar, and Wolfgang?
Yes.
And did you also marry Manny, Mo, and Jack?
Yes.
like any of them?
No.
Be sure not to miss I Married Joan, right after Dynasty.
I don't need a husband, I need a wife.
So in sum, what kind of a year was 1987? Well, let's see. There was the Iran-Contra scandal and the subsequent cover-up, the Hart scandal that led to his withdrawal, so to speak, the Biden scandal after he admitted lying, the Dukakis scandal, the Bork scandal, the Meese scandal, the Deaver scandal, the PTL scandal, the Robertson scandal. So what kind of a year was 1987? It was a very good year. Good night.
This portion of Not Necessarily the Year in Review has been brought to you by Cousteau's Frozen Fish Sticks. Remember, when Jacques on the box, you know it's Cousteau. And by Vanish, What Did Ever Happen to Hervé Villechaize? Starring Anne Bloom, Danny Breen, Stuart Pankin, Lucy Webb, with special guest appearances by Mr. Bill, Edwin Newman, and George Wendt. Okay, first I give the medal, then I shake his hand, then I salute. No, this is a military ceremony. I should salute first, then shake. But I'm in a suit. It's going to look dumb if I salute. I'll just shake his hand. Oh, that's backwards. Oh, dear. Well, what's he going to do? He's a general. He'll know what to do. He's probably going to salute. I'm the Secretary of Defense. If I extend my hand, he'll have to take it. Then, if he wants to salute, I'll salute. Hang on, I just read about this last night in the manual. What did it say? I should read these things right before I go to sleep. I always forget. Wait a minute. I know what to do. I'll do both. I'll salute with my left hand and shake with my right. Now, that'll look ridiculous, but maybe I'll try something else. I'll salute and click my heels. I can't do that. I'll look like a Nazi. Well, there's only two choices. It's either shake or salute. I've got a 50-50 chance of being right. I'll pick one. Oh, shake, salute, salute. Oh, here goes. Give him the medal. And...
Anguished mother or artful murderer, 2